So I know, not a shocker, you're pro-vaccine, right? I watched the video and maybe I'm misremembering. I feel like you're very giving and thoughtful to those who are still anti-vax, whereas I personally don't believe many in that community are I keep saying recruitable to reality. Okay. And for me, it's less the intent, because as you've said in your video, their intent is they're trying to protect their kids. Yeah. Right. But my main thing is everyone can have good intent, but the results. Do you feel like being open has actually been helpful? Do you feel like you've talked to people and they went, you know what, I've seen the light?
Sure. Part of what I do in being a family medicine doctor is I study influential psychology. So how can I influence a patient to make the best decision for their health? And what I've learned is the first step in having someone look at your views with an open mind is you have to get them to like you. And you, like pretty much every other doctor out there, gets very mad when parents don't want to vaccinate their children because they're worried about, like, you're doing this for a good reason. But now this emotion that you're having will right away put you at odds with someone who disagrees with you. And you're putting a stone in between that conversation. And now you're almost setting yourself up for failure. So what I try and do is keep that pathway between us as open as possible and actually try and find avenues where we agree. So if a patient who's anti-vaccine comes in, right away I'll try and find avenues we agree. For example, do you believe that measles is a dangerous illness? They'll say, well, yeah, sure, but it's good to have it. Okay, we can agree on that it's a dangerous illness. Do you believe that my interests are in the best interest of your child, that I want your child to thrive? Oh, yes, I agree. That's two things we agreed upon. Instead of me right away being outraged and angry at them that they don't believe in vaccines, I've created two avenues where we agree. Now there's a way more likelihood that they'll see what I'm saying when it comes to vaccines. Maybe I'll give one vaccine out of 4, but it's still a greater victory than evicting them from my practice. Sure. And them just getting a letter from someone who they can pay and prove that they have an exception or whatever, which does happen, by the way.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why we're seeing the situation in California, right?
Exactly.
Where we saw those protesters the other week. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I try and find that line of common ground, and so far it's been really successful. People are more likely to be open-minded and think through these things. And really the point that gets missed here is we see these people who are like totally out there that believe the government conspiracies, all that, right? That's really a small percentage that's always been around. They're just like that outlier of population that will always believe that no matter what. Right. But now with social media and the algorithms favoring extreme content and like, oh, vaccines are dangerous, like that's clickable, right? So with those people finding social media, people who are vaccine hesitant, meaning they're unsure, they just want to make sure they're doing right by their kids, they're not having these crazy beliefs, they go on social media and then they get poisoned by this information. Sure. What do doctors do about it? Zero. We have no doctors on social media. I mean, very few who are credible, giving good information. So I come in and say, I'm going to fill this void. I'm going to come make fun content, but also teach them something in the process of how we, decide whether or not vaccines are safe. Do they have side effects? They do, but the benefits outweigh the harms. And that's the thing I repeat over and over again on my channel. The thing that's very difficult about arguing with someone who's completely anti-vaccine is that they're so sure that they're right, and doctors cannot be so sure that we're right. Studying medicine requires a little bit of humility because things change in medicine. Things that we believe are facts change all the time. In fact, like a great example of this is we've had species that were labeled extinct that we then found like later at the bottom of the depths of the ocean. Oh, oops, they're not extinct anymore. But if you asked before that period, we would say it's a fact. So we have this level of humility where we say, this is the best information we have on hand now. It may change, but this is what we're recommending because this is the best almost like a poker player. You can lose a hand even against someone who's worse than you, but you're making the best decision you can with the limited information at hand.
I love that. So when you put out that video, what followed that? Did you get this wave of you're paid by Big Pharma? Did you like all these? Because I know that when I have talked about it and it ends up on certain private Facebook groups and stuff like that, all of a sudden you get this random wave that you didn't expect where people start just the craziest things. Do you, one, get that? Do you react to it? Because I totally understand your ability to try and keep things open, right? But do you have to resist, I guess, the urge to dunk on those people as a way to kind of keep the door open for others?
Yes, you can't dunk because the dunking is really there just for my own gratification. So I try and put that aside, right?
But you know, people would love to see it.
Well,
that's the
they
rough
would like
part.
to see it, but then I'm doing a disservice to the actual goal, because my goal isn't just to please people and create great content. It's to teach people and actually convince people to make the right decisions. So I feel like if that's my goal, I try and reach it as close as I can. And when I put out a video like the one I did, it went crazy viral. It has like 3.5 million views. I get a wave of people saying, you're wrong, look at this evidence, look at this evidence. But it's very small. It's, again, that small population who's always existed and have been anti-vaccine. And I don't react to it. I look at what they're saying, actually. I look at the negative critiques, because there's always some truth in the critiques. There's always something happening. But then I realize, like, let's look at their critiques. Let's see what they're doing. Let's double check what I'm doing. And I really come out on the end saying, I'm even more sure of what I was talking about before.
But the fact that you're going through the process, I think, is smart. It's admirable. What would you recommend to someone that's listening now, right? Kind of Joe Blow. They don't have your background. They don't have your experience. They come across an anti-vaxxer, right? Who's so sure. What would you arm them with?
Compassion and nuance, and understanding that if they were under their set of circumstances, they may very well come to the same conclusion.
I like
Once
that.
you can understand that, a lot of things change in perspective for you. And people, and this applies not just to the vaccine conversation, this applies to cancel culture, outrage culture, whatever it is, until you realize that you're just a little bit of nuance away from understanding how they got there. Only until you have that understanding and compassion can you actually do something about it. If you want to just be outraged, cool. If it makes you feel good, do it. But if you actually want to make a meaningful change, just being outraged doesn't help.